Shavua Tov. This week we're reading two parashot, connected parashot, Nitzavim Vayelech. We're approaching the culmination of the Torah. Bezrat Hashem and Simchat Torah. We'll have a happy Simchat Torah this year, a rectification of everything that we've gone through this past year, Bezrat Hashem. And the parashat leading up to the end of the Torah are these two parashot, Nitzavim Vayelech, part of Moshe Rabbeinu standing in front of the people before his passing. And all of the texts here, all of the concepts, all of the ideas that are conveyed are very fundamental, fundamental points of view and issues that, the greatest leader of our people chooses to express in his final words. So one of the points, what we're going to contemplate on today, a very short, beautiful point from the Ishbitzer Rav, that Moshe Rabbeinu generally says about all of this Torah. He calls it a covenant, the Habrit, the covenant that we are passing through with Hashem today. Now the words, the phrasing in Hebrew that Moshe Rabbeinu uses to describe the seeming commandment or the culmination of all the commandments, which he calls the general covenant of the Torah, the general covenant of the Jewish people with Hashem to devote themselves to the Torah and to keep in line with the Torah. So the phrasing he uses in Hebrew, he doesn't use the usual expected phrase of a commandment that you must accept this covenant, that you should, it's anticipated of you. What he says is just a description of events, like a present progressive tense, that he just says that this is the covenant that you are entering into, that you find yourself entering into, as if it's something that happens in of itself. That's, again, in the Hebrew wording, that's how it's phrased. So the Ishbitzer catches onto this, and he asks why is this this culmination of the covenant of the Torah not expressed in a demanding manner like it is throughout all of the rest of the Torah, where every time HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a decree that you shall not do this, you shall do this, so everything is always described in an anticipation or demanding manner. And here, the culmination of the whole covenant is expressed as something that goes without saying, or not even goes without saying. It's just a reflection of how things are. You are now going through a covenant. It's happening to you. So he says that if you see the context here of how it's described, so all of the phrasing is circling around not necessarily a specific action or refraining from a specific action, but the thought and mindset evolving around all of the Torah. And he says again a very beautiful concept that can be implicated in everyday life, in our assessment of ourselves, our understanding of our context. He says that in general, the Torah does not punish or demand anything of a person's thoughts, a person's state of mind, anything that doesn't have practical, immediate, actual implications. Like all the commandments are something, you do this, you don't do this, you're not allowed to do this, and you should do this. But what you think about it, or what your stance is on it, that's not something that's directly commanded upon. He says not that the reason for that is not because it's less important, the opposite. All the more so, it's the most fundamental part of one's soul, and therefore it's expected of you to be aligned with it, like inevitably aligned with it. Like this is the covenant. Like a true covenant is not something that a person does, but when you're in a covenant, so it's something that reflects itself in the default position of your life. So again, the example for this, he says, is where you're not being, where the Torah does not implement any restrictions or punishments. So like in any system in life, you can see, I remember as an anecdote on this, that when I was younger and I was debating where to go study, which yeshiva program to go study, so a certain individual gave me a piece of advice that, again, off the top of his head, not something that was contemplated, but I took it seriously. That when you choose a yeshiva, you should. It doesn't really matter what they talk about. You can go to several places and you see what the atmosphere is like. But what really matters isn't what's being studied in the classrooms or in the Beis Midrash, or with your teachers, or what the principal says, or with the signs on the wall say. What you want to find out is what people talk about in the mess hall, in the dining room, during lunch. Now, what was he implying? That like in many aspects of our life and all sorts of areas of our life, there are all sorts of things we need to do, we should do, And there are also all sorts of systems that are built around us in order to encourage us to do what we should do and to make sure that we refrain from doing what we shouldn't do. So, again, from police officers walking around the street and making sure you don't jaywalk or commit arson or any other sort of thing that you shouldn't be doing, and all the way to putting your ticket in on the clock at work, or paying your bills on time, and there are fines, and there's a jail system. There are all sorts of systems that are organized in order to help the flow of life go in a healthy, rectified direction. Again, presuming the systems are generally rectified, like usually they are today. But there are also many, many things in life where, or not many, but there are certain areas in life where there is no system driving you forward. And you won't be punished for it. You won't be like, the example he gives you, like your thoughts. So generally, you don't get judged for your thoughts. Also in the Torah, even in the Torah, you're not generally judged or demanded to position yourself in a certain stance. And really, you can see that there are very, very diverse stance, like understand your conceptual understanding of reality can be very diverse amongst the different sects of Judaism, even though the practice could be very similar. And because there isn't a clear demanding there, but not because it's lucid or amorphic, something that's not important, the opposite. Because it's not something to be demanded of you. It's not something to be commanded. But if you want to see where a person's really positioned, where's your heart truly set? Like, what's the real natural stance here? Like, there's something about all of the systems that are being demanded of you, that there's something synthetic about this, something that it's not natural, it's not true to who you are, even though it could occupy and encompass most of your life, most of your schedule, most of your day, most of the actions that you do. But those few actions or areas in your life where you're not compelled, in a way, they reflect a much deeper, more natural, spontaneous truth of who you really are. So again, if the police aren't around, do you go around committing arson? So hopefully most of us don't, but in all sorts of other areas in life. So how much of your connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is natural? So that's, again, like that story I said, that was a beautiful anecdote I heard from someone, that when you're choosing a school, a place to learn, or for your children to learn. So it's much more important what people talk about in recess, when there's no one supervising and there's no demands being made. Like, where do people spring back to by default? Where's their heart truly set? And this is much more reflectant of their existential covenant with HaKadosh Baruch Hu than their willingness to abide by a set of rules, or, again, quid pro quo, what you gain from it, what you don't gain from it, situating themselves in the system. But where the system is loose, where there's no rules, and you can just kind of snap back to yourself, what does that look like? What do you snap back to? And this is what the Ishbitzer says about the true covenant with Hashem is much more reflectant in the default position that you find yourself in when there's nothing demanded of you, than in how much you comply with the demands that are being made. And therefore it's described, again, not as something that is anticipated or as a demand or is this what you should do. It's not a should or a would. It's just what things are. The covenant should be existential. And if that's the case, then it's even more reflectant in the lax places of life. And then if that's the case, it's a very good thing to relax. If you relax back to Hashem, and that's, again, like we've mentioned this many times, that the natural place for that to happen, for this Jewish Yiddish natur, that's the expression in Yiddish, Jewish nature, for this natural, faithful, existential coexistence with Hashem, like a healthy relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's like human relations. There's a beautiful story from the Baal Shem Tov that two of his students wanted they, for some reason, I don't remember the context, but they asked to taste, to get a glimpse of the Garden of Eden, of heaven. So he sent them to an old couple, and they looked through the window, and as the story goes, they followed this old couple around, and for like a few days, they just saw them sitting in their like an elderly couple, and they weren't even conversing. Like, she's in her end of the room, and he's in his end of the room. Each one's minding their own business. Doesn't even say that he was learning Torah. Or it just says they were just sitting there, and they weren't even conversing or even looking at each other. But there was such a harmony, like a harmonious existential comfortability between them, that they sensed a heavenly atmosphere. So also with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, when everything is completely relaxed, where do you go back to in your default position? Is it a heavenly comfortability with with our servitude to Hashem, with our relationship with Hashem, with our connection to Hashem. That is the epitome of a covenant. And therefore, when the Torah describes and phrases our covenant with Hashem, it doesn't phrase it as a commandment or as a demand. It just phrases it as an existential state of being. That now you are in a covenant with Hashem. And that's how we should refer to it and see it and view it and cultivate such an existential stance. And in a sense, we can also measure it that way. How much is this our default state of mind? So B'ezrat Hashem, we should all be blessed in this coming new year that in all of our faith and all of our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not just ourselves, also all of reality. Hashem should become the default of reality, and then we'll have a heavenly reality. Everything will be heavenly and beautiful and heavenly, like the Baal Shem Tov story. B'ezrat Hashem, the reality is old enough, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was old enough that we can get along like an old harmonious couple. B'ezrat Hashem. So Shana Tova to everyone. Kol Tov.